now we're going to get into the sweeping arpeggio part that comes right before the very melodic part of the solo. So in Muse score, that first note definitely didn't sound good because of this bend right here. In this particular part of the track, there are 3 guitars for a moment, the 2 first 16th notes that are actually harmonized, and then just this bend right here in this red voicing that's sort of carrying through from the last section. So in listening to this, the guitar is all by itself. There is a quick hit of D minor right down here, but other than that, there's no bass and no rhythm. Now, the interesting thing here is, from the best I can tell, and the best that my ears lead me to believe, this arpeggiated part, while it is soaring up and down, is actually outlining the notes of a D minor chord. Here, it's very easy to see we have D and F respectively here, and as we ascend upwards, and I'm just going to use this part right here as an example for that, by the time we get to a note that would be outside of the D minor chord, we skip it and go back to D. So I'm thinking that what they're doing here is just outlining that in this first measure. In fact, it does seem to be that quite objectively from what I can tell anyways. Now, this part is definitely a little harder to make out. I might say that it's outlining an E due to the lowest notes right here, as well as this jump in the distance between the 2 guitars respectively, holding both the E right here and the third of E right here on that G. We once again have the G sharp in here that's been used up front for so much, and likewise an octave up from that as well. We also have a natural D here as well. So I honestly can't say too specifically what's going on with any of this stuff right here. It does, generally speaking, look like it's outlining an E though. So if I had to say something for it, it would probably be that. And in fact, now that I'm looking at it more, I probably call it an E diminished 7, since we have this E right here, and because in this key, the E diminished chord is diminished itself. So kind of hard to say, but that would be my best guess at it. We then get into the extremely melodic part of the solo with a unique rhythm underneath it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in context of the rhythm beneath it. Very classic Avenged Sevenfold sound to it, no doubt about it. So quickly taking a look at what's going on here in the rhythm, we have a D minor chord to start out with, moving to a G minor, going to a C, which is the flat 7 of the D minor scale, before quickly going to A minor, before actually hitting the harmonic minor adjusted flat 7, becoming a natural 7, which in this case is C sharp. So in the key of D minor, if you're going to play the harmonic minor scale, you adjust what would be the C to be a C sharp, and in that case, that gives us a C sharp diminished chord. Though in listening to the song, it actually sounded to me like they are omitting the 5th there, which would be the flat 5 in any diminished chord. So it still kind of has the quality of it, but it doesn't sound quite as intense. Though to my ears, when listening to it, instead of playing the flat 5 there, they are actually playing the flat 6, giving it a little bit of a, shall we say, suspended sound. Because the flat 5 is omitted, it doesn't sound quite as harsh as it would otherwise. Now, within that context, let's go ahead and look at the solo. So for this first measure right here, we are in D minor. What we see right here is harmonies that start on the D minor. We see a harmony that is based off of D minor right here. We then see harmonies that are sort of revolving around D minor once again, as can be seen. Here we have the third of the D minor chord and the 1 of it. So that's kind of a flat 6 harmony specifically. There's what could probably be classified as a passing tone here before getting back to the 3rd and the 5th of D minor respectively, for sliding up here to what would be the 5th and the 7th of D minor respectively, before transitioning to a G minor harmony right here. As can be seen, we have a G minor chord here, so we start this harmony based around that. A very similar thing as we observed before with the outline of the D minor happens for the G minor right here. We've got some passing tones in there, but otherwise we're outlining the G minor chord, and then we get to the flat 7, the C right here, which in this case is starting on the 3rd and 5th of C respectively, outlining the notes of C major before once again ending on the 7th and 5th, except this time it's the major 7th and the 5th. So these 3 measures right here all follow the pattern of outlining outlining notes that are within their respective chords, and even if it's the 7th, carrying through with that approach all the way before changing to the next chord of the next measure. And then we have the measure that starts in A minor and then adjusts to the C sharp diminished, or if we wanted to say it in a different way, the C sharp sus6. Part of me almost wants to call it a sus6, but we have the flat 3 in there, so I probably will keep calling it a D sharp diminished. Now, as the A minor is being played here, we are generally outlining the chord tones of it. However, I do notice that we have a C sharp in here. That's from the harmonic minor scale once again, before the actual C sharp diminished chord is hit. So that's kind of making me think that they're kind of telegraphing, if you would, what's going to be coming before they do it by including that C sharp in there while still on the A minor chord before the C sharp diminished chord. Now, even on the C sharp diminished chord, we actually don't have any use of C sharp within it. We have what could be viewed as a passing tone to the 3rd and the 5th respectively of C sharp diminished, but that's about it. And then as we move into what is essentially a repeat of this part, the only thing that's different from what I can tell is that they add these extra couple notes that before were just occupied by these notes on the first beat going all the way to the and of 2. Now on the 2, they actually have notes to just give it that little bit of variation. And I do think it changes the feel of the song quite a bit, even though all it's doing is adjusting what was a dotted quarter note before to have a harmony on the beat. It is a nice adjustment. Aside from that, everything else in this part is actually the same though. So let's go ahead and get on to what I have labeled the breakdown. So first of all, taking a second to understand the rhythm once again, we have a measure that is predicated heavily around the D minor chord once again, with some passing tones in there, before transitioning to the E diminished chord within the key of D minor. And this one I do feel quite confident about labeling in the manner that I have, given that we actually have the B flat in here that is necessary to be an E diminished chord. This descending thing going from the A minor to the G minor to the F major to the E diminished for this measure, just kind of a descension. And in the final measure of this passage, we have a D minor to this really weird, which given the fact that it has an A in the root, a D flat, and an F flat, I've decided to call it a G diminished no 1. Pretty weird. There's probably a better way to interpret this, but this is all I'm thinking of right now. Finally, then moving to the F major, which is a flat 3 of D minor, and then going to what I've called, for the sake of simplicity, an E diminished due to the key that we've been in this whole time and the root here, though there is some weirdness going on the bass with it. So again, sort of a strange chord. So with those being analyzed as best we could, now it's time to take a look at what's happening in the lead. Starting on the measure outlining a D minor, we have once again an outline of the chords of the D minor right here for it. And notice that when the passing tones come in for the rhythm, while these outlining notes of D minor are still held, they're not playing any new notes, no doubt to avoid clutter. We then outline chord tones of the E diminished chord, though once again without a 5th, while not playing any notes when these rhythmic melodic lines ring out, just like the last measure. And then moving into a crazy chromatic part. This section, we're going to take it beat by beat because each chord is outlined beat by beat. This line begins with the upper note in the harmony on A before sequencing around it, including the G sharp once again that's been utilized so much. Worth noting as well that since this note is the A, which is the root tone of A minor, this F right here actually is being played as the 6th of A minor. And it actually looks like what's happening here harmony wise is happening throughout the rest of this measure here. So in this case, the lead is actually staying consistent while the, so to speak, rhythmic lines that are harmonized themselves are changing underneath it. By the way, I just noticed this F looking very weird right here. Looks like I labeled this as an F because down here in the bass, it's playing an F. Still weird though, and probably could be interpreted better. Now the lead line does change here on the final measure of the solo right before the last verse. Starting on the D minor, the first beat of this measure, we again have chord tones with a little bit of sequencing around them. This super weird G diminished no 1 doesn't really follow that and instead looks like it's outlining some kind of D type sequence given the fact that the root right here is D. Still really hard to categorize though, so I'm not going to change it for now. And then we finally get to the F, which is the relative major of D minor, which on top of that in the solo, just going off the notes right here, looks like it's outlining some kind of C major chord. So that's again kind of hard to tell. While this final beat in the solo right here, though I've labeled as an E diminished, has some strange stuff going on in the bass. Solo wise, quite clearly seems to be outlining an A minor 7. General takeaways from this solo at large: no matter how complicated or fast your solo is, you can make it sound very cohesive to the rhythm by outlining the chord tones within the rhythm in the solo. This is called chord tone soloing, and you can basically get as crazy as you want, even utilizing a lot of chromaticism, just so long as you're loosely basing at least the downbeats off of what the chord tones are.